Welcome to IT Hour on KMET 1490. Hello and welcome to IT Hour, a new show where we focus on best practices for a better IT experience. I'm your host, Brad McDermith. Well, it's Wednesday and we're back on KMET 1490. I'd like to give a huge shout out to our sound engineer and producer, Mike. Mike, thanks for doing such a great job for us. And, we're here today with a special show. We've got a special guest. And before I introduce him, I was thinking about this guest, and I was trying to think of a way to introduce him. And a couple years ago, I got a really neat experience along with a few of my Vistage mates. And about 7 of us got to go out to the USS Teddy Roosevelt, the aircraft carrier. It was a CVN-71. We got to take off on a Grumman C2 Greyhound, and we got flown out and landed on this aircraft carrier, hooked on the aircraft carrier, and we got to spend 2 days and 1 night with all the sailors and the Marines, and we got to basically move around group to group, from the airmen to the senior brass, to the people swabbing the deck, all the way to with the guys that work down in the bowels of the ship, all the way down to the nuclear guys that work down in the nuclear reactor. And, it made me think. Today we're going to talk to J.J. James. He is our senior cybersecurity engineer. And it made me realize, when I was on that aircraft carrier, the guys that were really prized were these super smart guys that had this high-level security clearance that worked all the way down with that nuclear reactor. And the reason they were so high valued is because if something goes wrong with the nuclear bits on this aircraft carrier, those are the guys you want working on it. JJ is the nuclear reactor guy for California Computer Options. And So I'm very excited to introduce J.J. James. J.J., thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And do you feel like you work in the nuclear reactor?
I believe we're all nukies in our own way. Yes, I do.
Well, thank you for being on the show. And so, as you know, today we're gonna talk about the subject of ransomware and cybersecurity, since that has been so prevalent in the news. A couple weeks ago, it was at the top of the news cycle for quite some time with some of the events going on. And so we're happy to have you join us and add some real deep insight as to what's going on in the world and why does this seem to keep surfacing over and over again in the news, and why are there credible organizations that seem to have such a problem with cybersecurity and ransomware. So why don't you tell us, before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role with cybersecurity? And I know that you also have a big responsibility with our cloud platforms.
So my role here as the lead engineer, level 3, in this situation with cloud migrations and cloud clients, designing, deploying, and maintaining cloud infrastructures, including data security, overall security, and data retention.
Yeah, you've got a big role here. That's great. And, I know a lot of departments here count on you, from the Network Operations Center, the help desk folks as things get escalated, to our CTO counts on you for cybersecurity input. So you have a really critical and central role. So you are the ideal person to be talking to about ransomware and some of these stories. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And in the last couple shows, we've been talking about cloud platform security, IT best practices, and accountability for the folks that take care of all of this stuff. And these are all items that have surfaced in the news now. And let's highlight some of these stories that are relevant. The big topic in the last couple years in the IT world has been ransomware. And it's back again in a big way. And now even affecting gas prices as if we needed one more negative influence there. And I think it's funny. I was talking to a colleague earlier today, and he said, "Yeah, my friends from back east are calling, telling me, gas is up another $1." It's pretty hard to have Californians empathetic about gas prices. And in Virginia, they've got $7 a gallon gas. And I had a speaker in a Vistage meeting last week from the Washington, D.C. area, said they went 5 days without gas at local gas stations. That means you had to have enough gas in your car to drive out of town to get gas to come back. So that's how ransomware, I think, in at least a couple weeks ago, was affecting Americans' everyday lives. And a better way to put that is that's how lack of planning for ransomware in your business may affect Americans' lives. And so we're going to talk about some of those stories. So the story I'm referring to is the Colonial pipeline story, right. the regional that got hit back east, and what they did or did not do to prepare for this. And so we're going to highlight a couple other stories too coming up, and we definitely want to hear you opine on what's going on here, JJ.
Well, did you know not only did they end up paying that $4 million in ransom, but they also lost their productivity for all those days?
That's right. That's key story. So let's start talking about what ransomware is here. And I looked up the Oxford clinical definition, and ransomware is a type of malicious software designed to block access to a computer system until a sum of money is paid. Well, why don't you put that in everyday speak for us here?
The typical ransomware is an application that gets ran on your network, and it encrypts all of your network files, usually leaving some kind of README or some kind of information on how to reach out to the manufacturer of the ransomware for payment. The way you'd know that it was hit is when you go to double click or open a file, it will tell you, "I cannot open it, I have no idea what this is." And it can only be opened once it's been decrypted.
So when you're a victim of ransomware, there's no doubt about what you've got. You've been hit. There's a note or something.
There's a very clear path on how to pay them. Yes.
Okay.
They want their payment.
So you're a victim of ransomware right off the bat, and you're in big trouble.
Yep.
So what's the first step that you do when you're hit with ransomware?
First step is to take the network offline so that it cannot spread further. If it's a computer or a user, a computer or a server, you take the server offline, unplug it, kill one of the services so nobody can access it or it can't access other devices on the network.
This is something your managed provider, your internal IT folks are doing, or maybe if you're in that situation, you didn't have any of them to begin with.
Maybe so.
Okay, so let's talk about who are all of the people doing this, and I think that this. The organizations that have been proliferating ransomware have changed quite a bit. And so we know that with Colonial Pipeline, DarkSide, the organization that was found to be responsible behind this, that they did $90 million of revenue in this last fiscal year. And that they are now known as using the business model ransomware as a service. And so explain to us what that means, JJ.
It means that they use something called a rat that can ET phone home, so to speak. They get an application on your machine, and it can talk back to their services, their server, as a service. And they do a double-sided attack, so to speak. Not only do they encrypt your files, but they extort you with your files. They copy the files back to their home servers. And if you have proprietary data or secure data, they will post it. And they've already posted, 47 companies?
Yeah, so I remember, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, there was an East Coast law firm that had high-profile contracts and stuff like that, with actors and actresses and high-profile people. So it wasn't just for the law firm about getting their data back. The terrorists said, "Hey, we're going to expose all of this information unless you pay to keep it secret and pay to get it back." And so it's a lot more, not just about getting back to being operational and restoring your stuff. It's about not getting it compromised to begin with. So you may not be breaching your client's data. Maybe if you're in healthcare, it's PII. Maybe if you are in consumer, it's credit card numbers, or if you're in legal, it's confidential information. So it has a different implication depending on what industry you're in, doesn't it?
Very much so. Very much, because that is very crucial, because you don't want that private data to be public. Not only that, it can put a business out of business for that.
That's right, and ruin their reputation with their clients, because the clients can no longer trust them. Not
only reputation, but trade secrets can be published.
Right.
So it's a double sword.
Right. And ransomware as a service in this new business model, what I think I hear you explaining is you've got one organization building out the platform, building out this ransomware product, and giving it to others to distribute, and really making this a legitimate business for these terrorists, and making it spread a lot more rapidly. Whereas now not everybody has to reinvent the wheel for this sophisticated hacking software. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I also understand, I mean, you've got all of the former Soviet country Eastern Bloc there in the Russia area. This just has not had the stop put by the government that we would hope for. And so since it's almost endorsed there as a business line, just like we would have any other popular business here endorsed, or definitely not stopped, it just seems to be growing and growing and growing. And now with the major precedents set by $4 and $5 million ransoms paid like Colonial, I mean, it sounds to me like all of their best salespeople just got a big bonus. And nothing but good things happening in the ransomware business, it sounds like.
It's booming, that's for sure. There's actually countries that are okay with this, because it's bringing in money to their country.
Right. So probably a lot of tax revenue from these businesses. Right. So we're definitely gonna talk throughout the show about what we can do about this. In prior shows, we've talked about our layered security approach and what your managed service provider should be doing, what your internal IT provider should be doing, and how you don't have to live and just be a target and a victim. And so when we talk about the layered approach to security, that what that means is you're not just doing one thing. Your IT team has a strategic approach with a layered defense of both software and end user training and best practices. And when you put all of that together, it's those things that are mitigating your risk against that. It's an insurance policy to have a qualified managed service provider there as your team with this layered approach, or an internal IT team ready there with this layered approach to mitigate against your risk of being on the news like Colonial. And one of the things that I thought is, especially when everyone reacted to the news, is that, oh my gosh, everybody is vulnerable. Well, we're only seeing the stories that did come up in the news. I know Computer Options represents a couple hundred companies that have never been in the news. And I know there's a lot of other great managed service providers out there that represent companies that are never in the news. And so I think it's important to highlight that, and as you know, that there are thousands and thousands of companies out there that have a really good secure IT approach that, although they're not necessarily 100% safe, they have done a lot of strategic and defense work in their layered security, and they have mitigated their risk about being one of these people in the news. So, looking at the Colonial story, we know that Colonial Pipeline, this regional distributor here on the East Coast, they got hit with ransomware, and it took down their operation to the point where they needed to shut their pipeline off and their gas distribution, and it affected areas like Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and gas prices went up, and there wasn't gas available in some areas, and the government had to step in. The government had to change trucking permit policies and things like that. So trucks could get through earlier. They had to let ships with other flags in. They had to do all kinds of things in order to make up for this private company's lack of IT policy. And I think one of the misnomers is that terrorists were able to log in and shut down gas. And that didn't really happen. And what really happened was that they were able to infect ransomware on a bunch of admin systems. And because Colonial wasn't able to do their regular admin duties, they weren't able to get to Office 365. They weren't able to get to Microsoft Word. They weren't able to get to Microsoft Excel. And because they couldn't perform all of their admin duties, they were rendered useless. And so they went in and proactively shut down all of their pipeline operations so they could get their admin stuff back on track. And that's what actually ultimately shut them down. It's not like the terrorists were able to reach in and close valves. And I think that's kind of a big misnomer. Does that resonate?
That sounds about right.
Right. And so we're going to come back and we're actually going to dive into the Colonial pipeline story. We need to stop and take a quick sponsor break here. If you'd like to contact us, you may call at 888-804-1MSP or email us at ithour@computeroptions.net or follow us on Discord. Here's wishing you best practices for a better IT experience.
Hi, are you ready to join a well-established managed IT service company? California Computer Options in Redland, California is currently seeking full-time remote work for Level 1 technical consultants and small to medium-sized business network operations center engineer, Windows Systems Administrator. Please contact us at California Computer Options 909-793-6338, 909-793-6338.
Attention residents of the Inland Empire. If you or someone you know is shopping for a mortgage, turn to one of the fastest growing mortgage lenders in the Inland Empire, Arrowhead Capital Mortgage. We offer a variety of loan products and options to help you and your family get into the home of your dreams, and we make sure the process is easy. Don't miss out on these historically low interest rates. Call now, 909-335-0430, or go online to www.ac.mortgage. That's 909-335-0430 or www.ac.mortgage. NMLS ID 267884, Equal Housing Lender. Call for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.
So you're a business owner. You might be a doctor's office or a bakery, or maybe you're a financial advisor. And no matter what your core business is, there's no denying that technology plays an important role in your daily operations. Unfortunately, as we've grown more dependent on modern technologies and systems, IT failures are starting to directly impact our ability to do business, in some cases with catastrophic consequences. Think about it. What happens when a server crashes at your office or your entire network fails? Your first step likely includes a phone call to a tech support line, where you'll troubleshoot a few things to try to determine the cause of the problem. If that doesn't help, you'll need to get a technician to come on site and try to fix things. And what happens while you're waiting? Your business suffers. The doctor's office can't access patient records, the bakery can't process inventory, and the financial advisor can't input customer data. So while you might think of technology as being secondary to your core business, the reality is that without it, many companies would find themselves at a complete standstill. And as we all know, time is money. That's where our fully managed approach to IT can help. With proactive remote monitoring and management, we're able to keep tabs on your IT infrastructure 24/7, 365 days a year. And when a problem does arise, our technical experts can quickly resolve it, in many cases before you're even aware that there was a problem at all. For an affordable fee, we'll provide the monitoring, technical support, and full problem resolution you need to stay productive. If you want peace of mind, call California Computer Options at 800-804-1MSP.
And we're back on IT Hour with JJ James, our senior cybersecurity engineer and the nuclear reactor keeper. And you know what I was thinking back when we were on the aircraft carrier, out of all the places we were allowed to see, I think we were allowed to go everywhere, but that's the place we weren't allowed to go. And so, again, JJ is our master of cybersecurity, and that's why he's talking to us today about ransomware. So, JJ, we're going to dive right into this Colonial Pipeline story. And, you know, the operator of Colonial Pipeline learned that it was in trouble at daybreak on May 7th. And when an employee found a ransom note from hackers on a control room computer. And by that night, the company's CEO came to a difficult conclusion. He had to pay the ransom. Can you believe that they paid $4.4 million? And that's partly because they were unsure how badly the breach had been to its systems. I mean, they hadn't even, as far as we've reviewed the story quite a bit, and as far as we can tell, they didn't even really do a complete review before they decided to pay the ransom. And consequently, they didn't know how long it would take to get everything back. And so they were given so they paid the ransom. They were given a decryption key. Now, the decryption key is that's the password essentially. They pay the ransom, they get the password back so they can unencrypt all their stuff. It didn't even really work for them, from my understanding.
That's correct. The decryption didn't work. So maybe we should reach out to DarkSide and have them reprogram their decryptor so, you know, their clients can actually get their data back. But the bigger issue here that I feel is in one day, the company made a choice to pay $4 million when you could have resulted to some of the basic stuff with IT being a backup, an offsite backup, data being in another location. And to me, that would have saved quite a bit more money. So the remedy of actually removing the ransomware is quite easy. Uninstalling the application that does the encryption is easy. It's the decryption that you can't do without the vendor's help. And in this case, the vendor being a malicious application or malicious company that's out to make money off of, you know, encrypting your files. So a basic backup application to restore would have prevailed here. So why would we pay $4 million, or why would they pay $4 million? So that leads me to believe either the data integrity was also encrypted or something along those lines, so that they actually couldn't restore from their backups, or proper backups weren't maintained, which is what we see a lot in the IT realm. We see a lot of basic routine maintenance being ignored because, quote unquote, there's no time in the day.
So when we talk about our backup strategy here, which is only one of our 11 layers of our layered approach, we have backups on site, backups replicated off site, generally into the cloud. Those backups are encrypted, but we're also we're testing our restores, aren't we?
Quarterly and weekly, yeah.
Right. So we're not just setting and forgetting.
Right. We tend to do file level restores weekly just to ensure, and we have automated applications that can do that for us, and then a full system restore, you know, in a test environment to ensure that our quarterly restores are functional.
That's right. And so one of the things that we do in addition to is we get snapshots of servers so we can restore to dissimilar hardware. And that's got to be tested as well, doesn't it?
Correct. And that's what the test environment is. We can actually take an image snapshot and actually restore it to a VM and turn it on and see if it works. If it works, we know the backup and the entire chain is all functional.
So I hear you saying that not just backups, but testing backups is incredibly important.
Incredibly. And I think it's one of the most neglected IT services there is. It's such a simple thing. You just test a few things and you're good to go.
So how could a big sophisticated company like this get themselves into this type of situation? I mean, you know, I was just reading, it says Colonial Pipeline provides roughly 45% of the fuel for the East Coast. I mean, that was in their words.
Yeah. There's many layers here. Well, when we talk about layers, there's many ways an application like this can end up on somebody's computer. There's user training, of course, is one of the bigger ones. People acting to click the wrong thing, or malicious emails, malicious links, stuff like that. Then we can also talk about Windows updates and patch management and application management and updates through the applications to help prevent any kind of 0-day or any kind of exploits to be ran across the machine that you don't even know about.
Right, but how does Colonial get themselves in that situation where they didn't have the right backups? Is it because their backups are obfuscated and not all in the same place? Is it because they had some of the backups?
Usually the biggest flaw that I see with backup systems is when you have a computer network, it's on a domain, and your backup system is usually on a domain too. We tend not to, because once the domain's been compromised, anything on the domain can be compromised. So if you have a server that's doing your backups and it's not on the domain, it's on a work group, it's one more layer for them to try and have to get through to that server also to encrypt the backups or mess with the backups also. There's plenty of easy, simple ways to recover data. Some of them being something called VSS, which is volume shadow copy. This pretty much allocates a certain amount of hard drive space and creates snapshots file level based on a time rotation. Now, some of the malware is smart enough to go in and disable that. But if you make some changes, change which account has permissions to it, you would be able to remedy this within minutes. You can go into the drive that's in, your data drive that's in fact or has been encrypted, and you could recover data straight out of VSS without even having to do anything. No backups, no offsites, nothing. Just that alone. So there's lots of ways to avoid of having to pay that $4 million. But what was done? That's the question, and that's what I'm waiting to see released on the paper. I want to see what was actually investigated.
Right. So I think it's fair to say that their proactive planning for specifically their backup and recovery layer and their incident response plan had some major gaps in it. And it will be very interesting if they disclose more on what happened there. And they're keeping that pretty close to the vest right now. And and I'm not surprised. It's unfortunate because if you're in the ransomware as a service business, when you hit a big one like close to $5 million, that means business is trending in the right way and you're doing the right thing. And when you're on the flip side of it, when you're over here and you're in the United States and we're all fighting on this side, it sets a really bad precedent when we're paying the ransoms, and we're paying the ransoms at an increased rate the way we are. We've got to do a better job here and not be paying the ransoms, so they're not investing in more resources and better ransomware technology and exacerbating the very fuel that we're fighting against. And historically, for years, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has advised companies not to pay when hit with ransomware. The code that takes computer systems hostages and demands payment, just like we've been talking about. And doing so, officials have said, would support a booming criminal marketplace, exactly where we are right now. And I think that it's a tragedy that Colonial has given into this, especially given the fact that they probably were just not prepared the way they should have been. And now that has hurt the rest of the landscape for businesses. However, it's not just Colonial that has experienced this. Now, since Colonial, just a couple weeks ago, Scripps Health, the San Diego-based health network, is still being affected weeks after the ransomware attack. And the cyber attack that took all Scripps hospitals out of the emergency medical response system on May 2nd was not even available when a boat capsized off Point Loma. And in addition to that, they've canceled troves of regularly scheduled appointments. I mean, this is major disruption. And so I want to talk about Scripps for a few minutes. We did a little research on what happened over at Scripps. And so they're keeping it close to the vest. They don't want to be embarrassed. But those of us that are in IT, we're interested. We want to know. And so you pointed to something. What's a common denominator you've seen? Well, when we look at our layered security approach and we look at Colonial, we see backups as an issue there. When we look over at Scripps, one of the things that they admitted to was using legacy systems, past support, and not having legacy systems updated. So what are legacy systems? Well, that's where you're using hardware and software that's beyond the manufacturer's suggested time frame, beyond their life cycle, and beyond their support time frame. And so how often are you seeing that, JJ?
Pretty often, actually. Yeah. I can actually recall a recent event where we were going to an onboarding of a client, and they were pretty hesitant about bringing us on board and bringing us as an MSP. What ended up happening, what ended up making the deal happen, is I popped open my laptop, hopped on the Wi-Fi, and one of their printers was quite old. I was able to script getting into their printer, because, of course, default printer username and password. No IT guys change that, right?
Right.
Yeah. But they put the admin username and password to scan files on the printer. And the printer was quite old, so it was very easy to pull that password out of that printer. I logged into their server. I turned the laptop around. I said, "Is this your server?" And they said, "Yes, we got the deal." So there's all these little things that just are crucial to keeping a network secure. Now, granted, somebody would have to hack into the Wi-Fi and all that, but we know that that's not very hard in some scenarios. Again, outdated hardware, updates, patch management, these are all the secured, layered approach to making a network secure.
That's right. Going back to our layered approach, and this is the same analogy that I've been using for years, but it still seems true today. All of those layers, like we've talked, mitigate against your risk, kind of like safety in a car. I've always said that just wearing your seatbelt alone doesn't keep you safe when traveling in a car. But if you'll wear your seatbelt, if you'll stop at the stop signs, the stoplights, you'll follow all the traffic laws, and you don't drink 15 beers before you get in your car, it will up your probability of safely traveling between point A and point B. If you have Network Operations Center managing and monitoring all of your network devices, and we're remediating based on priority. We're doing patch management. We've got endpoint protection. We've got proper file and folder security. We've got backup and disaster recovery. We've got end user security awareness and training. We've got mail security. We've got all the layers that we talk about in this show, like California Computer Options provides for its clients, or a solid managed service provider is providing. You have really mitigated your risk. And you know what? Our clients aren't on the news, and there are thousands of businesses every single day that aren't in the news, and they're doing a good job. So we're highlighting the ones, we're highlighting the few that do seem to be popping up in the news, and we're looking for these common denominators and these items that they're not following. And so we identified in Colonial backup and scripts using legacy systems, past support. Another thing that there's a lot of speculation about right now that Scripps missed?
No, what?
Using multi-factor authentication.
Oh, we haven't even touched that subject yet.
But you know what? In show 2 and show 3, we talked about it a lot. And that's one of the things we preach here extensively.
Yes,
multi-factor authentication with Office 365, multi-factor authentication with your line of business application, your ERP. And then we spent all last show talking about all of the popular cloud platforms like Amazon.com, Facebook, Pinterest, and all of the places that we're on the internet all the time that we don't even think about. Gmail, Hotmail, AOL Mail, Yahoo Mail, and that having multi-factor authentication turned on in all of those places so someone doesn't hack those and masquerade around as you, do company purchasing on Amazon, or use your marketing account on Facebook, or send emails as you for Hotmail, and how important that is. And we've got a place like Scripps, allegedly, that may have been hit because they hadn't even implemented something like that, and now they can't be available for emergency services or any of their regular scheduled health care and preventative care. So it's a IT security is a real thing. And so it doesn't feel to me like this ransomware as a service is some super high-tech software that's so great that's getting into places that have got SOCs and IDS and all of this super sophisticated layered security. It's getting the low-hanging fruit, isn't it?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So Scripps and Colonial Pipeline, I think, are two great examples of, yeah, they were big institutions or relatively big institutions with big names and big responsibilities, but they did not have sophisticated IT to go along with their big names. And those are two exciting stories that we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about in the third segment. We've got to wrap it up here for a minute to head over and talk to some of our sponsors. This is exciting. I want to get back and we're going to talk about some more stories. But if you'd like to contact us, you can call in at 888-804-1MSP. You can email us at ithour@computeroptions.net, or please come and chat with us on Discord. We'll see you right after these messages.
Contacts, calls, chat, and meetings with Screen Share, all accessible in one place. Now it's easy to work anywhere on any device with no friction. Brilliant! The smoothest communication and epic collaboration in one simple, unified tool. Save time, reduce costs, toss the fragmented tools, grow faster, get happier. Work instantly improves when communication and collaboration happens in one tool. Make calls, read voicemail, chat, have video meetings, and more, all on your browser. And all of this is instantly available with zero setup or configuration. It's business done better and the productivity solution you need. Talk to us today to learn what our proven UC solutions can offer your business. If you want peace of mind, call Telecommunication Solutions from California Computer Options at 800-804-1MSP.
Attention residents of the Inland Empire. If you or someone you know is shopping for a mortgage, turn to one of the fastest growing mortgage lenders in the Inland Empire, Arrowhead Capital Mortgage. We offer a variety of loan products and options to help you and your family get into the home of your dreams, and we make sure the process is easy. Don't miss out on these historically low interest rates. Call now, 909-335-0430, or go online to www.ac.mortgage. That's 909-335-0430 or www.ac.mortgage. NMLS ID 267884, Equal Housing Lender. Call for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.
Hi, are you ready to join a well-established managed IT service company? California Computer Options in Redland, California is currently seeking full-time remote work for Level 1 technical consultants and small to medium-sized business network operations center engineer, Windows Systems Administrator. Please contact us at California Computer Options 909-793-6338, 909-793-6338.
And we're back with our final segment here on IT Hour, and we're still joined by JJ James, our cybersecurity expert. And so, JJ, we were just talking about in the last segment the two big stories that have happened in the first quarter, Colonial Pipeline and Scripps Health in San Diego. And we identified some common denominators, both lack of backup responsibility with Colonial and the speculation about not using multi-factor authentication and aging legacy systems with Scripps Health. And, you know, these are two rather large institutions that Scripps especially have a lot of reverence and respect in the communities. And clearly their IT support staff did not have the strategic approach nor the incident response plans that are acceptable in today's environment. And so We're gonna talk about some other stories here that have come up, and we're gonna continue to identify some of the gaps in some of these larger organizations that have been being hit. And so, what thoughts do you have so far where we are here, JJ?
Well, first I wanted to circle back a little bit on TwoFactor, the 2FA. I don't know if everybody knows what that is. So two-factor authentication is another form of authentication beyond your username and password. Usually it's a smartphone, you get text or code, log into your bank, you get the text message, type in the code, now you log in. So that's what two-factor is. And in this scenario, two-factor, in some instances, it's free or it's very low priced. And adding one more layer of protection on the network, it's almost a no-brainer. So that one is kind of just surprising.
But in large organizations, obviously it takes a skilled team with planning and rollout and all of that. But, it takes getting it on the roadmap and rolling it out. It's got to be done, just like several of these other layers.
Exactly.
And so what I think you're bringing up a good point here. What can you do if you're responsible for IT? Make sure your provider is checking these boxes, and MFA, and so when we just say MFA, what are we talking about? We're talking about your primary line of business application. We're talking about Microsoft 365, or maybe it's G Suite, or wherever your mail and productivity software is. And we're talking about other platforms that you might use in the cloud. What other things are we talking about with multi-factor authentication?
We can multi-factor almost anything. You could protect your Facebook accounts. You can two-factor authenticate on your RDS environment, which is your terminal server or remote desktop. VPNs can be two-factored. So it's just, there's no reason not to use two-factor.
So it's adding another layer of security on top of any platform interface that you've got.
Correct.
So you just brought up something that I think is really important. I hear a lot of CEOs and business owners, and I think they sometimes get this mixed up a little bit, but hey, I don't want to move my infrastructure to the cloud. I don't want to move my server to the cloud, because they believe that really has an impact on security. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So realistically, the cloud infrastructure versus the local infrastructure isn't that much different, other than where the data is physically residing. Key factors that we've had to correct in the past is physical protection, badge systems, doors, locked environments, so on and so forth. We eliminate all that by going into a data center and protecting our physical attributes there. Now, virtually, we use some of our layered approaches, two-factor authentication, and some of the other stuff to protect the environment. So the question is it less secure in the cloud? No, as long as you implement the correct layers, so to speak.
So what I'm hearing is we're using the same layered security approach for cloud infrastructure as we're doing the local on-prem infrastructure. And so, I hear from a lot of CEOs, I realize that the march ahead to modernize infrastructure is to take these recommendations we're getting from IT and starting to, continuing to move infrastructure into the cloud. But I don't want to sign my name on to moving into the cloud if it has a negative impact on security, especially right now with, the landscape being hot with security. I don't want to go to the cloud if that's a march backwards towards security, even if it's a march forward towards feature set and modernizing everything else. So I think that there's this real disconnect with people that moving towards the cloud is a march backwards towards security, which in fact is not. It's sort of the same security equation. However, it does go forward in reducing a lot of the other risk factors, like you just mentioned. Physical security, much better physical security. You've got armed guards, you've got badge systems, you've got controlled air conditioning at much greater levels than we ever have that we see on sites and manufacturing facilities, that even if they've got dedicated air conditioning rooms and stuff, it is in no way the level that we see at a level 6 off-site type facility. And the other thing that we see is hardware failure, hardware refresh cycles, and those types of things. I mean, all of that is done much more cost effectively and efficiently in the cloud and so those are the modern benefits of the cloud. and a lot of that has been convoluted and a little confused. And so I appreciate the clarification there about cloud not being one of those security items that folks are worrying about as an additional risk. So a little side topic there, but let's go back and talk about some more of these breaches. So, we talked about two big ones here. We talked about Colonial. We talked about Scripps. But, there's been another, there's a top 10 list I was just looking at just in Q1 of 2021, excluding the two examples we already talked about. And I like this first example. Australian broadcaster Channel 9 was hit by a cyber attack on March 28th, which rendered the channel unable to air its Sunday news bulletin and several other shows. With the unavailability of internet access at its Sydney headquarters, the attack also interrupted operations at the network's publishing business, as some of the publishing tools were also down. And what I think is interesting about this is, although the channel first claimed that the inconvenience was just due to technical difficulties, it later confirmed the cyber attack. So it just shows that they were embarrassed and they did not want to let this out, that this was a ransomware attack. And they tried to cover it up, but then obviously the cat was out of the bag and they had to say, yep, we were hit, we were unprepared, and we weren't able to do our job and show the programming. And so we don't know. Again, they tried to cover it up with technical difficulties and later said it was a cyber attack, but we don't know which of the layers that they didn't have. We don't know if they didn't have mail security, so someone clicked on something on a phishing email. We don't know if they didn't have backup. We don't know if they had old computers like we established in some of these other stories. We don't know what it is that Channel 9 didn't do over in Australia, but they were down under for a while. And what do you have to offer there, JJ?
Well, I wish they could give us some more public information so we can really identify where the failure was, so we can learn from it. But you hit it on the nail on the head. They're embarrassed. They don't want to publicize it.
That's right. And in March also, the London-based Harris Federation suffered a ransomware attack and was forced to temporarily disable devices and email systems of all of the 50 secondary and primary academies it manages. This is a great education example here. I mean, this resulted in over 37,000 students just unable to access their coursework and correspondence. I mean, what do you think's going on here, JJ?
To me, this sounds like actual breach. Somebody hacked the username and password, got in on their Exchange side or their actual email side, maybe even their device management, did some malicious stuff from there, maybe pushed out applications, started emailing people, I've seen ransomware pull contact list and start emailing everybody and getting the ransomware out that way.
Right, so this could be just the outermost layers not being honored here.
Yeah.
Another breakdown of the layers. So here's one for some ironies. Everybody ready for the irony segment? CNA Financial, one of the biggest cyber insurance firms in the United States, suffered a ransomware attack on March 21st. The cyber attack disrupted the organization's customer and employee services for 3 days, as CNA was forced to shut down to prevent further compromise. The attack utilized a new version of the Phoenix Cryptolocker malware, which is a form of ransomware. How do you provide cyber insurance for other firms and companies across the United States, yet you're getting attacked yourself? Who's providing your cyber insurance?
I remember reading about this, the Phoenix Cryptolocker, and their primary way in was an RDS or RDP session, which is remote desktop. Again, with two-factor authentication, that could have been prevented. Even if the password is compromised, two-factor authentication is an algorithm based upon time, and it gives you a code that you have to type in before it lets you fully authenticate into the RDS environment. So in this scenario, it could have all been avoided, again, with a very cheap two-factor authentication setup.
So even one of the largest cyber insurance firms in the United States is not doing the same strategic multi layered approach to IT security and using things like multi-factor authentication that we're recommending and that our clients are using, and they were shut down for 3 days because of it.
May or maybe not. Again, I don't know if they probably didn't publish how, because of course embarrassment again. But I do recall reading about that specific ransomware, and one of the main ways it would get in is RDP. Now they may have got tricked in a different way. There's all different types of way, phishing and user clickage, and user training is one of the bigger things. But the majority of what I read about that ransomware was it exploits an RDS environment, and then it pushes out with the legitimate signed certificate application, tricking the user thinking it's a valid application. And once the user runs it, it encrypts the network.
Gotcha. Very good. So we're running low on time here. I just want to touch one or two other examples. I want to skip down to the Microsoft Exchange mass cyber attack. This was a big 0-day threat that came last month, I think, and it affected millions of Microsoft clients around the globe, wherein threat actors actively exploited 4 0-day vulnerabilities in Microsoft's Exchange server, and it's believed that 9 government agencies as well as over 60,000 private companies in the U.S. alone were affected by the attack. Now, here at California Computer Options, most of our clients are in 365, and they're protected by multiple layers of 365 integrated mail security that's AI-based, and they weren't affected. However, we still have some large organizations where it's more cost-effective to have on-prem Exchange, and we were able to patch that 0-day threat when it came out, but it still was discovered by government agencies, and then Microsoft had to release that patch. So give us your quick thoughts on that, because this is going to be our last one to wrap up the show.
I remember that day very clearly.
I know you do.
I was up many hours fixing servers. So one thing I want to wrap up on that is that's where patch management comes through. And again, another layered bit of that security. If you patch it and you patch the vulnerability, it's not going to be a vulnerability anymore.
So this is a big deal for people that don't have real patch management as a system in their information technology, and are not taking it seriously, and that's why patch management is such a critical layer. So with that, you know what, JJ, this has been such a great discussion on ransomware and cybersecurity, but we've got to bring this plane in for a landing. So if you'd like to contact us today, you can at 888-804-1MSP. You can always email us at ithour@computeroptions.net or follow us on Discord. Here's wishing you best practices for a better IT experience.
This has been IT Hour on KMET 1490 AM. Join us each week Wednesdays at 4 p.m. You can email us at ithour@computeroptions.net or join us on Discord by going to kmet1490am.com, head over to the IT Hour show, and click on the Discord link. Thank you for listening, and here's wishing you best practices for a better IT experience.